Tonight, the Delphi Murders Trial shifts focus to the man who's accused of killing Abby Williams and Libby German more than 7.5 years ago. Thanks for inviting us in at 6 o'clock. The state today tried to place Richard Allen at the scene of the murders.
It's been a really busy day of testimony, and this was over the first time that Allen was interviewed about being on the trail at the time and the day of the murders. Bob Siegel spent the day outside the courtroom. And Bob, this is really interesting testimony. Tell us and walk us through what you heard.
Yeah, Ann and Scott, today jurors learned how it is that investigators zeroed in on Richard Allen. And it all ties back to a statement that Allen gave police just 3 days after the murders. Today, jurors learned that Allen met with an investigator here at this Delphi grocery store after he voluntarily called the Delphi Murders tip line to say that he had been on the Monon trails not far from the crime scene on the afternoon of the murders. A DNR officer testified about what Allen told him. Allen said he was on the trails between 1:30 and 3:30 on the days of the murders. He saw 3 girls walking on the trails. He was focused on his cell phone, and the officer said there was nothing about Allen that struck him as unusual. In fact, following that interview, investigators said that Allen was cleared. Investigators forgot him. They testified today that his statement got lost, and in their words, they said that it fell through the cracks until a file clerk happened to notice the information sitting in a file box 2 years later. And that is when investigators went out and they re-interviewed Richard Allen and they served a search warrant at his house. Emily Longnecker joins me right now. Emily, you were in court along with me today, and you got to hear more about that search warrant, some fascinating new details.
Yeah, we heard from the last witness of the day, Indiana State Police Lieutenant Jerry Holman, who supervised the execution of that search warrant on Allen's home in October 2022. And Holman testified that when he got to Allen's house, he told him, look, if we mess anything up at your house, you can fill out a form and police will repair it. And Holman told the jury that Richard Allen said, it doesn't matter, it's over. Holman says Richard Allen then sat in a car with Holman and was quiet most of the time, smoked a few cigarettes, and asked Holman if police had detained his wife. Holman testified that he told Richard Allen no and offered to drive Allen to his wife's work. Holman said that Allen replied again for a second time, it doesn't matter, it's over. Lieutenant Holman also showed the jury the gun that they retrieved from Richard Allen's home that day of the search warrant. At that point, that's when we saw the families of both Abby and Libby get pretty emotional. And we also saw some emotion from Richard Allen's wife today, Kathy, when Lieutenant Holman was talking about the search they did of their house that day.
We want to bring in right now Katie Jackson-Lindsay, our 13 News legal analyst. You were also in court with us today. I want to point out the defense pointed out, they reiterated for the jury that Richard Allen voluntarily called the tip line and said that he was at the scene, and he did that just a few days after the murders. What does a jury make of that? And is that something that someone who just committed a double murder would do, calling police to say, I was close to the crime scene?
Well, I think we will hear that this is the type of evidence that can cut both ways. The state will undoubtedly argue that a guilty person would do this in order to cover their tracks. But the defense, I think, is trying to build the idea that a guilty person would never do that. From a common sense standpoint, you wouldn't insert yourself into an investigation of your own criminal conduct. So it could really go either way for the jury.
And did you hear anything today in the courtroom that you think could be perhaps problematic, especially for the state that's presenting its case right now?
Yeah, so I think there were a lot of spotlights today put on the mishandling of evidence from the start. The biggest thing that stood out to me was that we learned that Richard Allen's first interview was not recorded, despite having the down the hill audio of the suspect. So you would think they would have been recording every audio of every interview at that point. So it just highlights that there were some issues from the start.
Yeah, and we want to talk briefly about the down the hill audio, because today we got to see the best view that we've had yet. We got to see what police have been working with, the really enhanced version of that video and audio, so we could hear and see things much better than we had before. So what we heard on that was actually from Tony Liggett. He was describing for the jury what he hears in the video. Abby saying, is he right here? Don't leave me up here. Then Libby saying, that be a gun. There's no path here. And then we hear Bridge Guy say, guys. and then we hear one of the girls say hi, and then we hear the man say down the hill. At this point, the state is now looking to connect all of these pieces for the jury, trying to convince them that Richard Allen is Bridge Guy, the guy that we have seen in the video that Libby captured on her phone behind Abby and Libby on the bridge. We are going to have much more from Delphi coming up later tonight on 13 News.
All right, Bob, Katie, and Emily, thanks so much for your coverage. And tonight on our Delphi Debrief, we're going to be taking a closer look at today's compelling police testimony. You can watch that stream every weeknight at 10 o'clock to catch up on the daily developments of the trial. WTHR Plus is a free download. You can get it on Apple TV, Amazon Fire Stick, and Roku.